An example of that, I know this case now is taught too much, and everybody has a different interpretation, I suppose, but I've been using it as an excellent example for a long time, so I'll just take a moment on Southwest Airlines. One of the resulting experiences of flying Southwest, if you are a frequent business traveler wanting to make a trip in the 150 to 300 mile range, which means you could drive or you could fly, you're not going 2,000 miles, you're going that 150 to 300 mile range. Compared to the alternatives of other airlines or driving, here are most of the key resulting experiences you get on Southwest historically. Things have changed a little bit since 2001, but basically this captures the key resulting experiences. You'll save time door to door. And we're not talking about the airplane now, we're not talking about the flight service, although that's related to it. But we're talking about from the time when you leave your house until you get to the office you're going to in some other city. You will actually end up spending less time by flying Southwest. And then this breaks that down. Instead of saying save time, which is a kind of vague statement that won't offend anybody, but we don't know exactly what we mean by that, I'm saying you ought to go back and ask, when you're trying to define the resulting experiences you're trying to deliver to your customers, break it down. So, for example, wait less than 30 minutes for the next flight every single time. You can only do that with a very frequent flight schedule. Except for the last flight of the day, you will always wait less than 30 minutes for any Southwest flight. You will always fly direct, never going through a hub. Hubs are a good thing. If you're going from San Antonio to Chicago, you want to fly to Dallas because that's where you'll make the connecting flight to Chicago. If you want to go to Dallas, however, it's not an advantage to fly into the hub. It's better to fly into Southwest Airport, which is Love Field, that's much closer to downtown, and you'll actually save time by virtue of moving from one small airport to another instead of trying to deal with hubs or making a connection. You'll be delayed in less than 10% of trips, which is significantly less than the rest of the airline competition. You'll spend less than 30 minutes surface time. That's from house to airport or airport to office, and that's because they're using small airports that are located downtown, aren't sexy, they were built in the 40s or the 50s, they're crummy airports, they're no good for going to Brussels, but they're just right for minimizing the total amount of time that you spend traveling. You'll spend less than 15 minutes in the airport. That's a little worse these days due to you know what. Procedures have had to be put in place, but traditionally it's been about a 15-minute versus a typical 30 to 45-minute difference versus other airlines in the amount of time you spend in the airport because of the simplification of procedures, because of the fact that the airport is smaller. In net, this means saving 3 to 4 hours per trip versus driving, and 1 to 3 hours versus other airlines, and therefore the business traveler can do more meetings in one day. So that's a really important resulting experience. Another one that's less important, but it's not nothing, it's quite separate, but it's not inconsistent, it doesn't contradict the first one, is they'll try to make you laugh. You're going to be a little bit amused if you have the right sense of humor. If you don't think it's funny to have somebody come out of a overhead compartment and yell boo at you, then you're on the wrong airline. But if you can stand their corny and ridiculous jokes, it does take the edge off the misery of flying a little bit. And they do it very deliberately. That means hiring people who have a sense of humor. It means hiring captains who are willing to dress up as a gorilla and walk through the cabin and then throw food at the CEO who might be sitting in the last row. It takes a certain cultural commitment to get there. They do. Trade-offs? Absolutely. You're not going to have any assigned seats, nothing to eat, no inner lining. You can't use another ticket. Can't use Southwest ticket or another airline. Can't get bags connected, transferred from another airline's flight. You won't be able to connect because you're not going to a hub. You're going into Love Field, and that's it. If you're going to Chicago, you just made a mistake, and you have about an hour's taxi ride ahead of you before you can get to your plane. So you may sit, you may be hungry, you may be in an undesirable seat, you can't make easy connections. Those are real trade-offs. It's not that customers don't want that stuff. Southwest traditionally got 8,000 to 10,000 complaints a year saying, why can't you have a reserved seating system? Why can't I get something to eat? Why can't you ever connect so I can fly to Chicago easily? And the reason is, for the customer who's going 150 to 300 miles in one day and values their time on that trip, that 150 to 300 mile trip, and likes the fact that the price is going to be no more than driving, it makes sense to institute all those trade-offs because those trade-offs allow Southwest, profitably, to end up giving you the rest of that value proposition, saving you time, telling a few jokes, but you'll be a little bit less comfortable. It'll be a little less convenient in some ways than a full-service competitor. So the price ends up being 30 to 50% typically below other airlines, or about equal to driving, and they've traditionally gotten something like 30 to 50% of their business by converting drivers into flyers in markets that they enter. So it's not an insignificant part of the business. And they've updated their approach to pricing. Now you get to pay for the first bag and the second bag and for curbside check-in and for any kind of changes that you make in your ticket. All of that with every other airline, basically, but not Southwest. With Southwest, you simply buy the ticket, pay the price, and you go.